Okay, so it is ferie or holiday here in July in Norway, and I've seen many people say, "Oh, um, I'm so tired," or whatever, or "I've slept in because it's holiday." Um, and to me, that sounds as if you slept in not really because it's holiday as such. Now I could be wrong, but you slept in because you stayed up too late last night because you knew you didn't have to get up early today. And so we're on holiday, so we start to change our circadian rhythms. But do you also at the same time go, "Oh, I'm on holiday, so I'm not going to exercise at all," or "I'm going to be on holiday, so I'm just going to eat utter shit all the time"? Probably not, because you understand that will be detrimental to your health. But at the same time, circadian disruption, i.e. the changing of your nighttime and morning routine, is also very, very, very destructive. And I'll use that word destructive to your health, because if you look at the review papers, you look at the papers out there, circadian dysfunction leads to increases in everything from heart disease to metabolic disease to cancers. Everything is increased by circadian disruption. Now, whereas we can argue the best diet, we can argue if you eat too much of this, will this happen? We can argue the best kind of exercise, but we know that movement in general is good, and we know that. So we take that movement in general is good, simple, easy. That's why we do it. That's why it's common knowledge that you should exercise a little bit more if you're sat down and you're sedentary a lot. We also know that you should eat well, and you should, minimize the amount of ultra processed foods. Not processed foods, because we process foods every time we cook them. So when people keep on talking about processed foods, we process foods every time we cook them, freeze them, we do anything with them. We are processing that food. But what they're actually meaning is ultra processed. And I've probably been victim of, or person of, someone that said processed foods when I'm talking about ultra processed. So I needed to clear that up. Ultra processed is the stuff that is basically just manufactured in a factory, that is just made up of tens of ingredients that bear no resemblance to whatever it should have been in the first place. Very, very easily digestible, highly palatable, and a lot of the times often designed to overcome our own internal mechanisms for fullness, etc. So that's what I mean. If we consume less ultra processed food, we move more, then we will be healthier to a certain extent. But you can do all that, and if you have disrupted circadian rhythms, you still have an increased chance of metabolic diseases, cardiovascular diseases, cancers, dementias and Alzheimer's. Everything is still increased if you have disrupted circadian rhythms. So why is that not up there with these things that say about improving your health? Exercise and eat right. No. Yes, do those things, but understand that a disrupted circadian rhythm is a risk factor all by itself. And it's one of the ones that doesn't take any effort to alter. Simply go to bed earlier, wake up earlier. Don't watch the TV all the way until bed unless you have good blue light blocking glasses. Have it slightly cooler in your room, have good airflow in your room. So there's pretty much no effort in order to reap the rewards, and that automatically start to decrease your risk of those things: metabolic diseases, cardiovascular diseases, dementia, Alzheimer's. So if today you've woken up late because you went to bed late, just understand, right? Much like if you ate really high fatty foods, ultra processed foods. I don't have anything against fat in the thingy. I'm talking about ultra processed fatty and carbs together food. All of today, and you didn't have any fruits or vegetables, you'd feel pretty crap at the end of it. And tomorrow you'd feel pretty crap. But you probably go to bed late and then wake up tomorrow late, and then you'd feel pretty crap, and you wouldn't put it down to the sleep. And we've got to start to understand that that's where we've got to put a little bit of focus. Because chances are, like most people, I was the same. I was the same up until maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago maybe. Yeah, 4 years ago I would say. Well, I would do the same. I would change my circadian rhythm. I would change my go to bed and wake up depending on the day of the week. And depending on where I was. And at the time, I just thought that, I feel okay. But then I started, okay, all right, I'm going to go to bed now. I'm going to try and get a sleep between 10:30 and 11 most nights. And all of a sudden I started waking up at the exact same time every night, every morning, without an alarm. Within kind of half an hour either way, like 15 to 20 minutes either way, pretty much. And all of a sudden I started to feel better. I started to feel more alert. I started to feel more awake. I started to just feel generally better. My energy levels were up. And this was like within a week. And then I did the same. I went back to my old routine. I had a couple of nights where they were late. And then I started to feel shit the next day. The next 2 days I started to feel I didn't have the energy, just fatigued. And I was like, it's just because I went to bed late. But it's not just that. It's what happens when you go to bed late. Because you've got to understand that melatonin is probably one of the most important antioxidants that exists in your body at any given time. Melatonin. So everyone knows it for going to bed. Everyone knows it for going to sleep. But it's one of the most important antioxidants because it can get inside your mitochondria. And if you've heard me talk about mitochondria before, you know that these are the things that provide the energy for you to do day to day. So maybe you had a shitty night's sleep last night, or you watched TV right up until midnight and then you went to bed. And let me just say that midnight, middle of the night. I'm just going to say that because there was a reason it was called midnight, because it was meant to be middle of the night, or somewhere in between middle of the night. So even when I go to bed at 10:30 and I'm asleep at 10:30, it's not my middle of the night, but I know my melatonin levels by midnight are sky high as they can be, pretty much. Or they're very much on the way up there. And then they'll start to come down again. But if you're going to bed at that time, when your melatonin levels should be going up towards their highest, then, and you've been watching blue screen TV, so you're inhibiting your melatonin levels. So all of a sudden, your melatonin levels that should be in your mitochondria, fixing all the oxidative stress that went on from the day, all of a sudden they're not in there. All of a sudden it's not doing that job. And so the next day you wake up and you feel like shit. You feel like you've got no energy, you just got to sleep. That's because you've got to make up for what you didn't do last night. So you're working on the old kind of dirty and stressed out mitochondria from yesterday because your melatonin couldn't get in there and clean it all up. So this is what I'm talking about. If you consistently change your circadian rhythm and you have circadian disruption, you are messing up your energy levels for the next day. But at the same time, you are increasing your risk of various diseases and pathological states. And that's why it's got to be up there in your quest for health. Because both nutrition and exercise are really important, and they require effort on a daily basis. Going to sleep early or turning off the TV and going to sleep early doesn't really require any effort. And you look, just go onto PubMed or Google or whatever, and just type in circadian disruption and a certain disease, and you will find a link, pretty much. Simply because that circadian disruption limits the usefulness of melatonin, which then damages the effectiveness of your mitochondria. And we know that many diseases have an element of mitochondrial dysfunction in them. So you are having a circadian dysfunction, which leads to a mitochondrial dysfunction, which leads to various other dysfunctions, which leads to a whole host of diseases. So how about we all just get together, much like we did with the exercise, and now we know that exercise is good for you, and that we know that eating highly processed food is not good for you, so we should all make an effort to eat well, eat better, much like, and we should all get together and go, do you know what? Technology is great, and the fact that we can have lighting 24/7 is wonderful for economic stuff and some social outings, but at the same time we've got to get a handle on our lighting, we've got to get a handle on our screen time, we've got to get a handle on our sleep and wake time and our stress levels. And all of a sudden, once you start to put in place sleep patterns, night and day, light and dark, all of a sudden you will wake up feeling refreshed and energized. All of a sudden you will wake up feeling, 10 years younger. And that's the wonderful thing about it. By doing nothing else, you will start to feel better. And once you start to feel better, once you have the good nights, because the other great thing about sleep and sleep deprivation is that we know how it affects psychological processing. We know how it affects decision making. And so this is the great thing about it, is if you put that as your foundation, then everything else becomes easier. Everything else becomes easier to do, because your psychological processing, your decision making becomes better and more balanced. Your ability to exercise and your ability to progress in the gym, do you know what? Increases because of what? Because you got to bed earlier, your melatonin can get into the mitochondria and clean them up. Therefore, then if we can clean up the mitochondria, then the next day we're able to produce more energy, which gives us more energy and more motivation, which then allows us to go to the gym and hit a personal best in the gym, which then adds us to better gains, which then adds to better results, which then leads to more positive psychological standing, more body self-confidence, etc. Obviously, it just feeds back in. It's just a positive feedback loop. Whereas this circadian dysfunction is a negative feedback loop. Circadian rhythm and optimization, it's just a whole host of positive feedback loops. And you have to get on board with it. Have to. There's a reason, like I'm coming away from my kind of coaching side, my personal training coaching side, and I really want to focus massively on this kind of circadian coaching. I'm still going to push exercise and nutrition because they work, they are important, but I want people to understand that the absolute foundation, in my opinion, is circadian rhythm, because it makes everything else easier. Right, I've ranted enough. Have a great day. The weather over here is not great, but it doesn't mean I've been out for my walk already in the daylight. And enjoy your day, stay healthy, get some light and get some dark later on. Have a good one.